So hello guys, a very good day to one and all. So here we get into question number 6 of ICAI mock test paper CA Intermediate. So question number 6 part A. Data analytics can be used in testing of electronic records and data residing in IT systems using spreadsheets and specialized audit tools including IDEA and ACL to perform fraud investigation. Explain the other relevant points in the above context. That is, data analytics can be used in testing of electronic. Okay. So he wants to know what are the things that data analytics can do. So first of all, write the first sentence as it is straight from the question. And now we need to look into what are the other things that data analytics can do. So here are the points. Data analytics, it just simplifies your working. Okay. So if you've got huge data, you have got big data to work on. And when you're using a data analytics tool, it just makes your work easy because you'll know the completeness of data and population. That is to be used either for your test of controls or for substantive test procedures, substantive audit tests. So data analytics first of all helps you to know the entire population of data and the completeness of data, whether the data is complete or not, whether it is for the entire period or not, whether it covers everyone or everything that is related to the data or not. It helps you check the completeness of data and the population, whether that is for your use of test of controls or for substantive audit tests. Next, data analytics tools helps in selection of audit samples, whether it is by way of random sampling or whether it is by way of systematic sampling. It helps you in picking up of audit samples. So when you've got the entire data, it is easy for you to pick up audit samples because you know that how the data, what are the different components which are available in the data? What are the different kinds of criteria by which you can apply and you can pick your audit samples. So it helps you in selection of audit samples. The next one is when you have a data analytics tool, you can actually recompute all account balances. You can recompute all balances and you can reconstruct the trial balance by yourself by picking in all audit account balances in all items. So it helps you in recomputation of balances by way of reconstruction of trial balance from transaction data. Since you have all the transaction data, you have the complete transaction data dump. From that you can reconstruct your trial balance through which you can recompute the balances. The next one is reperformance of mathematical calculations, whether with respect to depreciation or bank interest calculation. Usually if you see in any audit, we need to compute the bank interest calculation. We need to recheck that. And similarly, we need to recheck whether whatever recompute and verify whatever the depreciation workings that the client has given is right or wrong, whether it is completely correct or incorrect somewhere. So for those cases, for the complete recomputation of certain mathematical calculations, data analytics tool are going to be very helpful for you, very easy for you. And next, to analyze complex journal entries, which as we saw in essay 240 fraud, there are certain complex journal entries that management would use just to deceive the auditors, just to conceal facts or to indulge in some sort of fraud. So to analyze complex journal entries which are passed as per essay 240, it is going to be very useful for you. And the next point is also related, which is fraud investigation. So even with respect to fraud investigation or forensic audits, data analytics tools are going to be very easy for you. They are going to make life very easy for you. The last one is evaluating impact of control deficiencies. Say for example, in any particular audit, you understand there is a control deficiency, there is a control gap or a control deficiency, but you want to quantify what is the amount of that deficiency. Data analytics will make it very easy for you to understand what is the impact, what is the monetary impact of that control deficiency. For example, say in the case of one audit, GRN is not passed for all the goods receipts. So in that case, what happens is you'll be able to know which are all the POs against which there is a GRN MAT, which are all the POs against which there is no GRN MAT, but there is an invoice, corresponding tax invoice which has already come in. So these cases where there is no GRN, you'll be able to now take the monetary impact of that from the tax invoice or from the PO. So data analytics helps you a lot and makes your work very easy with respect to any audit. So here are the points, just a recap of the points. So it helps you check the completeness of data and population, whether with respect to test of controls or substantive audit tests. It helps you in selection of audit samples, whether with respect to random sampling or systematic sampling. It helps you in recomputation of balances by helping you to reconstruct your trial balance from the basic transaction data. It helps you in re-performance of mathematical calculations, whether with respect to recomputation of depreciation workings or bank interest workings, etc. It helps you in the analysis of complex journal entries passed as per SA 240 by the management. It helps you in fraud investigation and forensic audits. It helps you in evaluating the impact of control deficiencies. Okay. So now into the next question. Question B of question number 6. Audit testing done through statistical sampling is more scientific than testing based entirely on the auditor's own judgment, because it involves use of mathematical laws of probability in determining the appropriate sample size in varying circumstances. Explain and also state the advantages of statistical sampling. So, as it is given in the question, statistical sampling is more of a mathematical procedure of picking up samples than whatever you do based on auditor's professional judgment. So let's pick the same line from the question. Audit testing done through this approach is more scientific than testing entirely based on the auditor's own judgment, because it involves use of mathematical laws of probability in determining the appropriate sample size in varying circumstances. And also you need to understand that statistical sampling is more helpful for you when the data is more or less reacts like the same. I mean, the data, the reasonability of the data is wide. I mean, where you have got wide application, and where all the components of the data, all the samples of the data more or less have the same attributes. So statistical sampling has reasonably wide application where population to be tested consists of large number of similar items, and more in the case of transactions involving compliance testing or debtors confirmation or payroll verification, vouching of invoices and petty cash vouchers. So in all these cases, the attributes of various samples are not going to be extremely different or extremely complex. More or less it is going to react the same. For example, when you're picking your payroll and you want to test as to you're picking a sample based on statistical sampling, it will be easy for you to know as to how many people in that population have OT which is paid to them, that is overtime allowance, how many people are getting covered under HRA allowance, how many people have certain sort of special allowance which is given by the management. So all this will be easy for you. So now into the advantages of statistical sampling. What are the advantages? Sample size does not increase with increase in universe size. So if universe size is increasing, it doesn't mean sample size is going to increase, because the sample size you have picked it based on laws, mathematical laws of probability. So that is not going to change with your universe size. And similarly, it is easy for you to estimate the minimum sample size given the audit risk and precision. So say for example, you define the audit risk as low, high or medium. You define the audit risk and then you define the precision at which you require your samples. If that is fixed, then it is easy for you. Statistical sampling makes it easy for you to pick up the minimum sample size. Right. The next one is sample selection is more objective and hence more defensible. Here you are not getting into a person's own professional judgment. For example, one auditor's professional judgment would say this set of samples is best suited, whereas another auditor's professional judgment would say no, this set of samples is best suited. So here we are not getting into the probability of human error or clerical error is very less here, and hence your sample is based on certain mathematical laws of probability. Say it is picked by system, it is based on mathematical laws of probability, and hence it is more objective as compared to whatever we pick based on our own professional judgment. So in that case, tomorrow if someone asks you on what basis did you pick up this sample, you have certain basis to clearly show them that it is based on these mathematical laws of probability that I have picked this sample, and this is proper statistical sampling. So the samples which you are picking based on statistical sampling is more defensible for you tomorrow when it is prone to certain peer review or certain additional audit procedures. And the last point is it provides you a better description of large mass of data. Since the non-sampling errors with respect to clerical errors or the processing mistakes, that is going to be very less. Okay, that's going to be negligible. So it gives you a better description of large mass of data. So let's get into a recap of the advantages of statistical sampling. The first one is statistical sampling. The sample size does not increase with the size of universe. Point number two, statistical sampling makes it easy to estimate the minimum sample size provided you have defined the audit risk and the precision, the specified size of precision. Third one is sample selection is more objective and hence it is more defensible. And fourth one is statistical sampling provides you a better description of large mass of data as non-sampling errors, non-sampling errors like processing errors or clerical mistakes are not as large as in other methods of sampling. Right. So let's jump into the next question. Where the accounts of the branch are audited by a person other than company's auditor, there is a need for a clear understanding of the role of such auditor and the company's auditor in relation to the audit of the accounts of the branch and the audit of the company as a whole. Explain. So when someone is giving you a question, even when you're reading the first line of the question, when the accounts of the branch are audited by another person who's other than the company's auditor, at that time itself the essay should come into your mind. It is essay 600 using the work of another auditor. Okay, so immediately give the side heading as the respective essay, essay 600. And now, yeah. So with respect to essay 600, these are the points which I've jotted down. So essay 600 emphasizes on first 2 points. There is a need for clear understanding of the role of branch auditor and the company's auditor in relation to the audit of accounts of the branch and audit of the company as a whole. So first of all, there needs to be a clear understanding between the auditors. One is a component auditor, one is a company auditor. Company auditor is nothing but the principal auditor, the main auditor. Component auditor is nothing but the auditor of the branch or the consignment office or the warehouse or the subsidiary company. So whatever it might be, whatever the component might be. There is a need for clear understanding of the terms and conditions between the two auditors, the terms of the audit. As to what is going to be your role, what is going to be my role. Next one, both the auditors should have a proper rapport in order to achieve a very effective audit. The principal auditor and the component auditor need to have a very good rapport in order to ensure the audit ends up in a very effective manner. And whatever is the statutory requirements governing the entity may confer on the principal auditor to visit a component and examine books of accounts and other records if he thinks it is necessary to do so. So say for example, if there is no other component auditor, there is only one principal auditor, the statutory requirement, all the statutes which are governing the company, it would confer the right on the principal auditor that okay, you can go, you can get into the component, you can look into the books of the component, other records, if you think it is necessary for you to do so. But in cases where there is a separate component auditor in place, there is a separate auditor for branch or consignment office or warehouse or the subsidiary, there is a separate auditor. In those cases, the principal auditor may not necessarily go and visit the place, visit the books of, look into the books of accounts or other records, except in special circumstances where he thinks it is necessary for him to do so, that it is necessary for him to visit the place and look into the records, the books of accounts. In other cases, he can rely on the work of the component auditor. So what are the procedures to be followed by the principal auditor when using the work of another auditor? So as per essay 600, using the work of another auditor, what are the procedures to be followed by the principal auditor? First of all, he needs to inform the component auditor of the use of his work. So before I use your work, I need to inform you that, dude, I'm going to use your work only for this reason. I'm going to use your report for this reason, right? So when I'm telling that, I'm also going to tell you these are the areas. This is my audit plan. Even at the time of planning only, both these people need to coordinate with each other. So this is how we are planning this audit. And these are the areas in which I require your special attention. Apart from the regular work that you're doing, these areas, based on the audit risk that we have defined and based on the levels of materiality that we have defined, these areas seem to be more riskier. I want you to concentrate on these areas of audit. The principal auditor needs to inform this to the component auditor. So make sufficient arrangements for coordination of their efforts at this planning stage of audit only, right? Inform the other auditor of the time table of the audit and points requiring special attention. So the principal auditor needs to tell him that this is a time frame in which we are planning to complete the audit. So we have like 1 month at our disposal. So before this 1 month only, we need to close the audit. So maybe after 2 weeks, we'll coordinate on what we have already done. We'll discuss on what we have already done and what additional needs to be done. We'll also discuss on what are the special points requiring more attention based on the development of audit. What are those points that you need to more look into? So all that these two people need to coordinate with each other. Advise the other auditor of auditing, accounting and reporting requirements. So the principal auditor needs to give an idea to the other auditor of what are the accounting requirements. Say for this particular branch, this particular statute is going to come into picture. You also look into all the labor laws, the compliance of labor laws. You also look into that particular state's, say for example, professional taxes or shops and establishment regulations. That also you need to look into. So the principal auditor need to inform the other auditor of what are the accounting, auditing and statutory requirements that he needs to, reporting requirements that he needs to look into. And finally, the principal auditor needs to obtain a representation from the other auditor for compliance with the above requirements. So whatever we discussed so far, I need a representation from you that yes, we discussed this. Yes, the principal auditor informed me of all this, and these are the things that I have done in accordance with whatever he said, and these are the accounting requirements which I try to comply with. These are the auditing requirements which I try to check compliance with. So all that he needs to give a representation, right? So with respect to SA 600, when you ask this question, the keywords that you need to remember are there needs to be a clear understanding between the two auditors on how to on their respective roles, and these two auditors need to have a good rapport right from the planning stage itself as to understand the requirements of the audit, the auditing, accounting and reporting requirements of the audit, and to understand on the timetable of the audit, the time schedule which is allotted for the audit. Okay, and next thing is that the principal auditor also needs to convey the other auditor of how he is going to use the work of the other auditor. And finally, he needs to take a representation from the other auditor that all the above requirements have been already discussed and we have complied, and this audit was done in compliance with whatever was our discussion. And wherever the principal auditor feels it necessary to do so, he may visit the component, whether it is branch or subsidiary or consignment office or warehouse. He may visit the place. He might look into their books of accounts and other records. But in other circumstances, normally he would rely upon the work of other auditor as per SA 600 using the work of another auditor. So last question, BNP has reduced its share capital to a great extent in the year for which you are conducting the audit. State how you will proceed for verifying the reduction of capital. So reducing share capital is a very, very important step. For example, now your paid up capital is, say for example 1 crore. You're reducing it to 10 lakhs. Usually when a company is reducing the share capital, the paid up share capital, it is going to adversely impact the shareholders' interest in the company, the assets of the company, and you're going to revalue your assets, and there is going to be special disclosures in your financial statements. So all this comes into picture, and above all, you need to take the approval of NCLT. You need to get the order of approval of NCLT, and you also need to comply with the requirements of ROC. You need to inform all this to ROC. ROC issues a certificate that the shareholder of the share capital of the company stands reduced. So all this comes into picture because reduction of share capital is not a joke. So first of all, you need to verify. Since you are doing an audit, they would have already complied with all these procedures, and now you need to verify whether they have complied with all these procedures or not. So first you need to verify whether a shareholders meeting was properly convened, and in that particular meeting a special resolution was passed with respect to reduction of share capital. Even before convening that meeting only, you need to verify whether these people have given the proposal for share capital reduction in advance to the shareholders, whether they have even conveyed it in advance to shareholders saying that yes, in this particular meeting we are planning to reduce our share capital, in which we are planning to pass a special resolution for your approval, based on which we'll take it forward. And for any particular change which is going to happen in your share capital, there are two things. One, you need to check whether your AOA authorizes such reduction of share capital. Next one is MOA. MOA will come to it at the end. At the end, you need to alter the capital clause of the MOA based on the share capital reduction. That's the last point. We'll come to that. And once after you've verified that AOA authorizes this reduction of share capital, then you need to examine whether there is a tribunal order for capital reduction. And once there is a tribunal order, NCLT is approved that okay, this company's capital can be reduced. You need to file that tribunal's order, the NCLT order, as well as the minutes of the shareholders meeting in which you passed the special resolution, both with ROC. Once you have filed this with ROC, ROC will issue you a certificate with regard to reduction of share capital. And once all this is done, all the procedural aspects are done, now we are coming into books of accounts. Now check whether the accounting entries have been clearly passed with respect to reduction of share capital. A very simple logic. When there is a reduction of share capital, you are hitting your liability side. When you're hitting your liability side, for you to match your balance sheet, there also has to be a corresponding entry on your asset side. So check whether there has been a corresponding reduction in the assets. And check whether there has been a revaluation of assets. The revaluation of assets has been properly disclosed in the balance sheet. When we are talking about balance sheet and financials, then comes into picture Schedule 3. So whether Schedule 3 of Companies Act 2013, all the requirements of Schedule 3 have been properly complied with. The disclosure requirements of Schedule 3 have been properly complied with. What is Schedule 3? It is our financials, the balance sheet, P&L account, and cash flow statement. And next, verify whether the members, the register of members have been properly altered. All the members' accounts in the register of members have been properly altered. What is register of members? The register of shareholders. So now earlier my paid up capital, the shareholders paid up capital was, say for example, this person had a capital worth of 1 lakh. Now it has been reduced to 10,000. Check whether in the register of members, against that member's name, the share capital stands reduced to 10 lakhs. So check whether the old share certificate has been altered from 1 lakh to 10 lakhs, or whether new share certificate for 1 lakh to 10,000, or whether new share certificate has been issued for 10,000 and the old share certificate for 1 lakh has been cancelled. So check that. Okay. And the next point is, wherever the NCLT has said that no, you need to, wherever you are stating your company's name in the balance sheet, you need to state and reduced in that name. Whether NCLT has given an order like that, in that case check the compliance with that. Confirm that the words and reduced, if required by the order of the tribunal, have been added to the name of the company in the balance sheet. And finally, once after all this is done, alter the capital clause of the memorandum of association. Okay, so this is all with respect to reduction of share capital. When you're asked this question, first write the side heading as audit of reduction of share capital. First point, check whether there has been a shareholders meeting, and in that meeting whether special resolution was passed. Even before the conducting of that meeting, check whether the proposal for share capital reduction was conveyed to the shareholders in advance to that meeting only. Check whether your AOA, that is the Articles of Association of the company, authorizes the reduction of share capital. And fourth point, look into the order of NCLT, whether NCLT has approved such share capital. If yes, whether you have filed that order along with the minutes of the shareholders meeting with ROC. And next, check whether ROC has issued a certificate with respect to reduction of share capital. Once after all this is done, come into books of accounts. Check whether proper accounting entries have been passed in the books of accounts. Check whether there has been a corresponding reduction in the assets of the company, and check whether the revaluation of assets has been properly disclosed in the balance sheet of the company. Check whether the balance sheet of the company is in compliance with Schedule 3 of Companies Act 2013, and check whether the members account in the register of members has been properly altered, whereby the old share certificate has been altered such that the new paid up share capital is disclosed, or a new share certificate has been issued. A new share certificate has been issued with the reduced paid up capital amount, and the old share certificate has been cancelled. And then check wherever the NCLT has mandated that the word and reduce should be added to the balance sheet of the company, to the name of the company in the balance sheet. Check whether that compliance has been done with. And finally, check whether the capital clause of your memorandum of association has been duly altered. So that's it for now. Hope you all enjoyed this entire session of ICAI mock test paper for for CA intermediate students. All the very best for your exams. So do really well. The exams are going to be very easy. So you're prepared really well. Stay confident. And in case you're liking this content, please do subscribe to our channel, Guru Institute. And please do pass on this word to all your friends, peers, and all your study circles. Thanks a lot. All the very best.